You're listening to Loughy Savoca, a fantasy football podcast. We're talking rookies today, baby. Episode 8, getting rather deep into the month of August. It's August 11th, beautiful Friday out here. The heat wave in the Northeast is coming to a close. So, Matt, I'm happy about that.
It feels like football. A little soft breeze came in, and suddenly you're reminded that fall is right around the corner. And yeah, we're getting you ready for your fantasy football drafts, continuing the quest to help people. Say you just signed on, maybe early to mid-August is your usual time to get back into the swing of things. We're going to talk rookies today, all the relevant situations you need to know and how it affects not just these rookies, but the veterans around them. So you're going to be completely caught up understanding these new situations. Excited to go into it today.
I like that clarification. This isn't just about the rookies. It's about what happens to other players on the team. And a lot of it, it's going to be speculation because we don't know yet. You know, Justin Jefferson was a very late round pick or undrafted in a lot of leagues in his rookie season. You know, there's plenty of guys that come out of nowhere and just light it all on fire, light the world on fire. But when you got guys Brown, like Chris Olave, you got Michael Thomas back, you have Jarvis Landry there now, it starts to get a little deep. Then you got guys like Treylon Burks. If you don't mind, can we start there in Tennessee?
Okay, sure.
Okay.
Sure.
I know you probably wanted to go from like earliest pick to latest, but we'll do first round to start it off. I don't think we necessarily have to go in order. We can talk about the most interesting ones. And we'll talk about some day 2 picks, and we'll dabble in some day 3 stuff if we find it important. But first, if you haven't subscribed, right, if you're listening in podcast form, go ahead and do so. Helps us greatly. Leave a review and a rating as well if you like this content, if you think we've helped you and you enjoy listening to us. It all takes us a long way. And if you're listening or watching on YouTube, thumbs up, subscribe, leave a comment down below. I read and respond to all of them. We appreciate you for that in advance. All right, so the reason I want to talk about Treylon Burks, and by the way, watch Matt's video on the Fantasy Football channel. This is why I stopped fading rookies, I believe it was. Great video, going to take you a long way, shorter form. I call them dumper videos. You sit down, maybe a break at work, you got to fire one off real quick, and you're like, let me check out a fantasy football video and make this a productive, hopefully 10 or less minute session, because then – you know,
but it's great too. You get the 10-minute right. you can extend when it extends, and your girlfriend, fiance, wife, whatever is like, where did he go?
Oh yeah. When you stand up and fall into the wall because your legs unknowingly went numb, that's when you know you're in trouble. Or you're like, God, I hope there's more underneath the sink. Go ahead. Toilet paper.
The idea behind it is we've got nice 10 to 15 minute highly produced videos to get you the gist of everything you need. If that's all the time you have, we've got it for you. But then if you want more analysis, you want to dig deeper, here you go. This is here for you. It's all available for you on the Stokastic Fantasy Football channel. Easy as that. So we start with Treylon Burks. Not the first wide receiver picked in the first round. In fact, the final wide receiver picked in the first round, but his situation is really, really unique because they trade away A.J. Brown on draft night, meaning that he's going to be always compared to A.J. Brown. The minute he goes in there, the hype is high, and it didn't start very well. In minicamp, he was basically called out by the coaches for saying his conditioning just wasn't good enough, and then he kind of admitted to it. That's not great. That's not a great start, especially when all they've got behind him are really no names and Robert Woods coming back from a knee injury. Here's the positive news. He's playing in training camp right now. Robert Woods looks like he's going to be available to play. And maybe most importantly, Derrick Henry looks like he's going to be full go for week 1 as well. If this trio is healthy, there's going to be a lot of fantasy points for those 3 players. In fact, Treylon Burks could be fantasy relevant right off the bat. If he had an 8-target game against the Giants in week 1, nobody should be surprised. That said, the range of outcomes here remains really, really high. If for your one redraft home league that you really care about, this is too much of a risk, I understand that. But Player Profiler is comping him, his prospect metrics, to a player like Jordy Nelson. And Jordy Nelson was great at scoring touchdowns. Touchdowns are going to help you in fantasy football, in case you didn't know. Big frame wide receiver with great speed and burst. A lot of upside here. Just a really high range of outcomes.
Yeah, very wide range of outcomes. And this was an asthma thing, the conditioning. He said he got it under control. We'll see. You know, I
They
couldn't
all
tell.
kind of said this wasn't just asthma, though. They said, yes, this is asthma, but it goes beyond asthma. And then Burks kind of said yes, too.
So maybe that was his way of being like, no, I'm fine. Yeah, I got it under control. We're good now. I don't know. But yeah, the reason he's interesting to me, and actually one of the most interesting rookies, just given his ADP, is because, like, okay, so if you look at underdog fantasy for best ball, he's going like 86. They're always going to have sharper people that are keen to these type of situations. But elsewhere, if you're drafting in some of these other leagues, you're talking about way down the board, like easily into the triple digits. Why is that important to me? And I mean, Matt just laid out his case for it. I don't have to like Treylon Burks. I don't have to actually be excited about him. You could go into this knowing nothing about him, as a matter of fact. But you could say he's a first-round pick. They traded away A.J. Brown and drafted him with that pick. Serious cope right now with the Titans fans, by the way. You know, like, no, but we got Treylon Burks. You don't know. You have no idea. They just hate A.J. Brown. They hate what happened. But I digress. Big thing here is that as I love Robert Woods as a value pick as well. But Robert Woods might never be the same again. I saw some video. It looked like he was getting separation, a decent burst, but you don't know until he's in a game situation. Maybe Robert Woods isn't the same guy. Maybe he isn't. Maybe he's never right. Maybe his knee is never right again. And Treylon Burks ends up being the wide receiver 1 in his rookie season. Is it probable? I don't know. What I do know is that by getting Treylon Burks wrong, it doesn't do anything to affect your drafts. You're firing darts at this part of the draft anyway. If you get Treylon Burks right and he ends up actually being the clear-cut, bona fide number 1 in this offense, albeit a run-heavy offense, you've probably got one of the biggest steals in the draft. That's how I look at it. I don't even care who the player is unless, you know, I know he has the pedigree, and I know he's in a situation to where if things unfold the way they should and the stars align, he could be a rookie wide receiver 1.
Absolutely.
On his team.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a know your league and know your draft room situation because this is a Tennessee receiver core where in some drafts Burks is going to go ahead of Woods, and some drafts Woods is going to go ahead of Burks and vice versa. And also, you need to take a player like Burks after your wide receiver starters and your flex starters are pretty much all set because the upside is there, but you really don't know what you're going to have. You're not starting him week 1. So pay attention to the players you've taken before him when you consider who you want to take in this Tennessee receiver core. Honestly, at their ADPs, they're both decent values right now.
How do you approach somebody like Jameson Williams where, number 1, you got him as a first-round pick, the Detroit Lions, countless bad seasons in, rapid succession have created an opportunity for them to really add depth to this team. Young players, a lot of early first-round picks. But you also have Amon-Ra St. Brown, who came on insanely strong last year. You have a pass-catching running back in DeAndre Swift. You brought DJ Chark into town as well. And we don't necessarily know what Williams' status is going to be as far as whether he's available or not. What do we make of that? Is there any reason that we should be targeting him right now?
Oh, yeah. There's a reason we should be targeting him. First of all, if it weren't for that late December injury, I think he would have been the first wide receiver taken. He's younger than both Olave and Garrett Wilson, and he's only had 1 season of true breakout play, but oh my God, it was just insane level production his final year in college. And then you got the fact that he is IR eligible if he's not available the first few weeks of the season. So as he gets healthy, you can just stash him on IR. You get a free roster spot. I said in my rookies video that you mentioned earlier, you can check it out on the Stokastic Fantasy channel, that Jameson Williams in leagues where there's an IR spot, he's a must-draft player. His ADP is like 165. I'm moving up a round and a half, 2 rounds to take him no problem. Because you get the free roster spot. I get to take another late round shot anyway. I love Jameson Williams, the prospect. I know Amon-Ra St. Brown is good. I know DeAndre Swift is good. I know this offense is meh. I have to take chances on a player like this, especially when you get that extra roster bonus to it.
Would it be another late round shot, or would it be placing him on the IR after the draft and then scooping someone up undrafted off the waiver?
Well, I see that essentially as another late round shot.
Okay,
right?
Right. I just wanted to be clear about that.
Yeah,
I get what you're saying, though. There's zero risk to it whatsoever. There's zero risk, even though like he's going to miss. It looks like at least the first 4 games, targeting a November return. Could be interesting. What's the worst? Again, what's the worst that can happen? This is why rookies that get no hype, that are first rounders, in a situation like this, can be really appealing because you're risking nothing in going after them. Like there are other ones where obviously there's a lot of inherent risk that comes along with it. I'll be honest, and we'll talk about Breece Hall, but Breece Hall is one of those guys. If you want him, you're getting him in the 4th round. I do want plenty of Breece Hall. I like Breece Hall, but I'm not going to sit here and pretend that there's no risk associated with drafting a rookie running back on a Jets team that just lost Mekhi Becton again for the year and is or likely out for the and is gonna, we don't know. We have no idea what we're gonna get out of them. And then you've got guys like Garrett Wilson, decent segue, same team, where you have Elijah Moore, look pretty good, right? And then outside of that, like Corey Davis and whoever, but can Garrett Wilson step into a role where you look at him and go, hey, I think this guy can produce big numbers in year 1?
So this is tough. The Jets are not the same team. If you haven't really been paying attention to the Jets over the last 2 seasons, you weren't targeting them last year in fantasy drafts. Their entire offensive core is different than it was 2 seasons ago. Corey Davis may be the 4th wide receiver on this team, because Braxton Berrios actually came on late in the year last year. You got Elijah Moore still there, who was a 2nd-round pick last year. And then they add Garrett Wilson as the 1st wide receiver off the board this year. So there's some firepower there. The bullish case for Zach Wilson is that there's enough firepower to get him over the hump. But I said in that rookies video again that you're only taking one of Garrett Wilson, Breece Hall, or Elijah Moore. You're not at a point where there are multiple fantasy relevant Jets, but I think there's going to be one here. Wilson is a player who, had immediate playing time at Ohio State when he was a freshman, and it actually forced Jameson Williams to transfer schools. I don't know how you pick between him and Olave. I just think the situation is tougher for him. I'm not really taking a lot of redraft chances on Garrett Wilson. In Dynasty, he's a fantastic play. I think the Jets are going to be better, but that loss to Becton on the offensive line, that sucks, man, for this year.
Yeah, it does, because they were looking really good, too. It looked like, then they still, honestly, they still can be. Sure. They can still be an above-average offensive line, particularly in the middle, but I don't know. It's going to be tough to say whether or not somebody like Garrett Wilson can produce in his first year. This is not a spot, honestly, that I'm super enamored with. I do want to ask you, though, about the 1st wide receiver off the board. And this was definitely a surprise to some people. Drake London. He's going, 90, 95, if you're looking at just like aggregate ADP across all these sites. 68 on Underdog, though. Where in the world you've got Desmond Ridder and Marcus Mariota as your 1 and 2 quarterbacks right now in Atlanta, a inferior offensive line from what we've seen in the past. Maybe they make some improvements this season. What's very likely to be an anemic run game once again. I know the guy, he has the potential to be very, very good, but it seems like a very high ADP for Drake London right now. Tell me why I'm wrong.
So here's a situation where the uncertainty level is so high that I'm not sure that digging into the projections, which are going to be based on conjecture by whoever's creating those projections, are very helpful. So the wisdom of the crowd then is our next best option. In Fantasy Pros ADP, in half PPR leagues, he's going 110th. But here's the kicker. In high stakes leagues, in FFPC leagues, he's going 80th overall. 76th overall. That's starting to tell me that the sharp players, the players who are putting more money on this, are thinking that the upside is good enough to bet on way ahead of the field right now. I think it might just be a guaranteed target share because you got basically nobody else there. Like, if they throw into Alamade Zaccheaus more than Drake London, like, no, the only person he's competing for targets with is Kyle Pitts. So it's a similar situation to Tennessee where there's going to be only a few fantasy relevant players. I just think the pie is going to be so small in Atlanta that this is reductionist. He's just a better best ball pick because that slim chance he is a wide receiver one. There is a really, really big ceiling case, but do you really need to chase that right around pick 100 in your one redraft league? I don't think you have to.
Like 68th overall at Underdog right now seems
That's crazy high.
Insanely high. And it goes back to what we talked about at the opening. Treylon Burks. Again, it's not like I'm insanely excited about Treylon Burks, but he could be the number one on his own team. And if you're talking about targets, go look at the other receivers not named Robert Woods on that team as well. Fitzpatrick, Westbrook-Akina, like there's nobody there at all. Yes, they're run heavy, but if you were to contrast that to Atlanta, you'd say, okay, Atlanta is probably going to be playing from behind a lot. They're going to have to throw a lot. But how valuable are these targets? Like, you're going to need more throws from these guys, unless we just see, super surprising performance at the quarterback position. At least in Tennessee, you know that Ryan Tannehill is a league average quarterback.
His efficiency metrics, again, if you look at quarterback is the only position you want to do this with. But you can look at 3-year stats, and Ryan Tannehill's 3-year efficiency stats up there with the best in the league still. It was a dip last year, certainly concerning, but I think he could still be really good.
Yeah, and listen, in a vacuum, I'm taking London over Burks any day of the week. I'll just take what we believe to be a pretty big target share, pretty big piece of a small pie. But if it's like a 5-round or 4-round difference between the two, it's hard for me to justify that. That's what I'm saying.
I think in a lot of home leagues, he'll go like back-to-back. They'll go back-to-back in like the 11th round or something like that.
You think so?
Yeah, I do. I think people will see them as the same sort of post-fantasy lineup starter positions as like the first bench player they want to take a chance on.
I could see it. But right now on Underdog, Burks is basically going 2 full rounds after.
But we should mention that ADP is fueled primarily by tournament players, the Puppy, the Best Ball Mania tournament, and so they are searching for that 1 percentile upside, that sliver of hope that Drake London becomes an absolute target monster, the next AJ Brown. It's in there in the range of outcomes, but you don't need to chase it like you do in best ball leagues in your redraft leagues. Hey guys, if you haven't checked out Underdog Fantasy, what are you waiting for? It is truly the best place to play fantasy football, and best ball is a new spin on our favorite game. Just draft your team and that's it. No waiver wires, no roster moves, that's it. It just picks the best lineup every single week, and they've got so many ways to win over there right now. They've got the Puppy 3 tournament, which just launched, a $5 entry fee and huge prizes up top. It's actually the 4th iteration of this popular $5 tournament, and the Best Ball Mania 3 tournament rages on all summer long. $25 entry fee gets you 3 different opportunities to win $1 million. And we got so many bonuses for you guys. If you are new to Underdog, sign up with promo code Stokastic, STOKASTIC. That'll get you up to a $100 first match deposit bonus. But what if you're already signed up over there and you want our rankings? We got you covered there too. Stokastic.com/best-ball. Use promo code PUPPY3 for $1 access to all of our best ball rankings, and we'll also kick in our fantasy football draft kit as well, a $70 value, absolutely free. Promo code Stokastic over at Underdog, and over on Stokastic.com, it's Puppy3.
Wilson, Williams, Treylon Burks, talked about all of them. We talked about Drake London. Jahan Dotson.
Yeah, man.
Dude, this is a problem for me because, even Terry McLaurin had a difficult time overcoming the headwinds that faced him every single day in Washington last year. Sorry. Now you add Dotson. This one's just real tough for me. I mean, McLaurin barely eclipsed 1,000 receiving yards in a 17-game season, finished with 5 touchdowns. What role does Dotson play here that can get him where you'd need him to go? Or is it just another flyer, another dart throw?
This is a dart throw, but this fits the mold. This fits the flow chart for me, the strategic way I play rookies in most of my home leagues. There is always 1 to 3 first round or very early second round athletic rookies that because of their situation, they just get dumped to the floor. 176th in Fantasy Pros half PPR ADP right now. That is the asymmetric upside I'm looking for. Whereas I could legit get a running back who I know is going to get 8 to 10 touches in the 10th, 11th round instead of taking a Drake London or a Treylon Burks. I can instead take Jahan Dotson, who I'm probably going to drop on waivers, but is still a first round pick. You know, the NFL doesn't whip that badly that often. Sorry, Jalen Reagor fans. But I do think
if you didn't mention it, I was going to.
So the way I feel is at 176, that's my second to last pick or last pick in my draft. I expect to drop them anyway. But Dotson is a player that, in terms of situation, in terms of projections, it doesn't look good. You can't really say with any certainty that he's going to have a huge role. But first round talent, you know, maybe Loughran goes down. Again, we say it all the time, range of outcomes. A good season is certainly possible.
That's what I was going to ask you. I was going to ask you, how does he get there? And likely results in a Terry McLaurin injury, right? Carson Wentz has been terrible in practice. That's not surprising whatsoever. I mean,
it's like to the surprise of no one.
Yeah, let's call a spade here. Carson Wentz has been sailing balls. It's really odd, too, because you're looking at a guy that in 2017, and I watched these games closely. 2017, he looked spectacular. This looked like, I remember people talking about dynasties in Philly because he looked that good. Tears the ACL, goes out, throws a touchdown on the torn ACL to Alshon Jeffrey. They win the Super Bowl. Big Dick Nick becomes just a folk hero now, a legend in Philly. He really is. Like, Nick Foles will always be a legend after that Super Bowl run, which was, clearly a flash in the pan.
Yeah.
Wentz was never the same after that, whether it's his inability to move in the out of the pocket and throw on the run, which was really benefited him, or something else. I don't know if it's in between his ears or what, but
have I given you my Wentz 2017 spiel before? I'll keep this really short because I know we have so much time. But
go ahead.
Wentz, in terms of advanced metrics, expected points added, was out of his mind on third down that year. Out of his mind. Every third down, no matter where it was on the field, how long it was, he was converting. On first and second down, Wentz was the exact same erratic, mediocre quarterback we have always seen.
So he was clutch.
He was out of his mind clutch on third and fourth down that year, which made him look incredible. It really fascinating stuff.
Interesting. So now he just lost that third down ability, and yeah. Which I also think is a lot of ability to be agile in the pocket, and it's gone. So all right. I only mention that because Washington's passing game and pass catchers specifically are going to suffer miserably if Wentz continues to really struggle. But we'll see.
He's probably a wash from Taylor Heineke at this point, maybe a little bit better. It's just such an offense that you don't need to bet on. Like in best ball, it's different because you can get them so late in drafts. But 1 to 0 Washington players should be on your team at the end of your fantasy draft.
Last day one wide receiver, last day one skill player that we'll talk about, Chris Olave. To me, one of the most fascinating ones. And I don't say that because I'm enamored with him. I say that because there's some mouths to feed in New Orleans. I think Alvin Kamara is going to play at least most of the season. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But right now it looks like he's at least going to start the season on the field, right? And play at least several games. Then you have Michael Thomas, who I'm not sure if you've been paying attention to this, Matt, but all of the reports out of camp are that Michael Thomas looks like prime Michael Thomas, like legitimate 2009, 2000, 2019, right? Yeah, 2019 Michael Thomas, where he was the wide receiver 1 by like 6,000 fantasy points. Then you bring in, don't sleep on Jarvis Landry. I'm not excited about him, but Jarvis Landry is still a quality possession receiver. So Kamara, Thomas, Jarvis Landry, and Chris Olave could be a dangerous offense if they can figure it out at quarterback. If Jameis Winston is good, he's never going to be as you're not going to see the same passing volume as you did in Tampa Bay. But when there's this many mouths to feed, how do we approach this with a rookie coming into the fold?
This is tough. You can't project it very well because, as you said, if Thomas and Landry are healthy, they are players that, even at their slightly advanced age, we're talking about 28, 29 years old, they still deserve a significant target share. But Olave might help for real life football more than he might for fantasy football. That's the way I kind of see it. Again, it's another situation where you're going to see the best ball ADP creep up because him catching 10 touchdowns, not crazy because of the offense he has around him. That said, you got to get Thomas involved if healthy first. You've got to get Landry involved first if healthy. You got to get Kamara involved in the passing game if available. So then Olave becomes a fourth option. Yes, Jameis Winston in the past has been able to support multiple fantasy relevant players, but inside the top 100 picks where he often goes, I just don't see it. I know some other platforms are really, really high on Olave because of the talent level. And hey, sometimes talent wins out, but I think there's a ton of talent that he's got to beat out. And I'm not sure it's this year.
It seems very difficult to think that he can produce wide receiver even 2 numbers.
If he were at Jahan Dotson, draft position, I'd be drafting him every single draft.
Oh, it's a smash. Yeah.
Because
you're talking though, what, 8th? Well, no, let me see. Okay. On ESPN right now, yeah, he's going in the single digits.
It's too much.
It feels like it. It definitely feels like it. Yeah, I don't know. All right. Want to talk some day 2 players?
I think this is where we mine the gold. Well, we got two premier running backs, but then we got to dig into some.
This is where it gets fun. And again, hit the thumbs up, subscribe, podcasters. You're still out there. Leave us a review, rating, all that good stuff helps us immensely. All right. We have to start with Breece Hall. And I don't actually think we need to spend a lot of time on this. We've spoken about him a lot. We kind of already alluded to our positions on Breece Hall earlier in this show. So I'll turn this one over to you. We both think he's a freak of nature and one of the most talented running backs to come into the league in a pretty long time.
Yep. It's a robust RB pick for me. If you take 1 or 2 running backs in the first 3 rounds, then add on Breece Hall so that he's like your RB3, and he's someone who you can take your time to develop. He's going to have RB1 weeks. We just don't know if it's going to be right away. We're playing this the same way we played Jonathan Taylor in his first few years in the league, the same way we played Cam Akers pre-injury. This is just the way you do it. I don't suggest taking him as your flyer running back 1 in a wide receiver heavy build. Bottom line is he's still going to be taken off the field for Michael Carter. And again, you're only taking 1 Jets player on your 1 fantasy team. So in terms of talent, phenomenal. Matches out as in terms of prospect metrics to Jonathan Taylor. Dynasty leagues, get up there to take him. Seriously, he's a great talent. But in terms of your 1 fantasy draft, it's about how you draft around him, which makes him more or less appealing.
I love him. I don't want him as my RB1. I'm okay with him as my RB2. And one of the reasons for that is something you and I have discussed at length. There are a lot of running backs that you can find later in the draft. I'm not talking like 11th, 12th round, right? But 6th, 7th, 8th, and there's of course there's always going to be some dead zones, but like 6th round, you can find some good stuff there. I even think once you get down into like the Singletary and Penny, listen, I'll eat my words here if I'm wrong. I always will, but I have to take stands at some point. And with Rachaad Penny, I said they didn't sign this guy to this is my stance. I don't believe they signed him to a 1-year deal to not use him. I think they'll run this guy till he's injured or till the wheels fall off and then turn it over to Kenneth Walker. And in practice the other day, the reps were 92% to 8% Penny. I don't know.
Well, then.
Like, did I think the split would be that heavy? No, I thought maybe like a 70-30, but Penny, when healthy, has been very efficient. Matter of fact, led the league in yards per attempt last year. Very good.
Kenneth Walker is a good prospect, though. I will say that.
No. This is nothing against Kenneth Walker. This is about in a season where the Seahawks likely aren't going to be very good, and I can see we may disagree on this, which is good. In a season where the Seahawks likely aren't going to be very good, where the offensive line likely isn't going to be very good, where Kenneth Walker still has to work significantly on his pass protection on third down, might make sense to ease him into the mix a little bit, not put a ton of mileage on him when you're not really expecting to win much this year. It's not an indictment on Kenneth Walker. It's my overall view on how this situation plays out when you've just given the guy in front of him who finished the season last year insanely strong, a contract and basically said, all right, go do your thing, man. Maybe you can earn another contract after this. But of course, the injury concern plays into Penny's injury concern certainly plays into Kenneth Walker's value on top of that.
I think a light bulb just went off for me as you started to say that. The talent for Kenneth Walker, the talent profile is pushing his ADP up maybe 3 or 4 rounds. Because situationally, we would not be chasing the straight handcuff in Drew Lock or Geno Smith's offense. So it is the talent and the hype for Kenneth Walker that is pushing his ADP up. I just realized I'm one of those people hyping up Kenneth Walker because his talent profile looks really exciting. He looks like a very durable running back or possibly durable running back. And if he can add a pass catching acumen to his resume, then in terms of, straightaway speed, I think he can beat Rachaad Penny. But if the team is just viewing him as a straight insurance policy to Rachaad Penny, he's a handcuff. He's a straight handcuff going sometimes in the top 100 picks for a team that's not going to be at the goal line very often. You need a lot of things to go right if that's the case. As good as he is, that's a risky proposition in redraft leagues.
Yeah, and I could be completely wrong on this too. Maybe that's not. And by insurance policy, this would be a 1-year thing, and then he's just the guy.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. Penny was a surprise first round pick too. What I'm saying here is that I'm a little bit more skeptical that Kenneth Walker is just going to come in and get a lot of work. I mean, even last year, man, you can say what you want, but Javonte Williams was being drafted as a guy that most people assumed Melvin Gordon just wouldn't get a lot of work. Melvin Gordon finished with more carries than him. I think they had identical amount of carries, but Melvin Gordon missed the game, and that was when Williams had like 27 attempts. So had they both played 17 games, Gordon would have had more carries than him. They finished as the RBs 17 and 18 on the season. So it's not like Williams was bad at all. Don't get me wrong. But in terms of the overall talent profile, it's clearly a younger Javonte Williams, but it didn't matter as much in year one. And you see that across history all of the time with the NFL, that even if somebody's better, they don't get, I mean, I'll never forget, like LaShawn McCoy. You remember in his prime how amazing LaShawn McCoy was, right?
Absolutely.
Second rounder, and because Reed never drafted first round running backs on that team, second rounder, but he sat patiently behind Brian Westbrook for that first season. And that's just the first example. You could come up with a lot of examples if you sat down for 5 minutes. So I think there's a good possibility that could be the case here. And that's all I'm saying. Do you think that could be the case with James Cook and Devin Singletary in Buffalo?
So I think this is the part that applies to both of them. They need some sort of high-value touches. For Kenneth Walker and for Javonte Williams last year, it started to work because they gave Javonte Williams basically a ton of red zone opportunities despite the team not having a lot of them. If they do that for Walker in Seattle, it'll work. And for James Cook, the value touches he'll probably get are pass-catching work out of the backfield. I don't know how much they're going to use a pass-catching back in Buffalo because they would prefer to go deep to players like Stephon Diggs or Gabe Davis, but the front office clearly values this swing pass catching running back role. They went out and tried to get J.D. McKissick. That failed, and now they take the 63rd overall pick in Dalvin's little brother, James. I think in redraft, he's a really interesting proposition. Great offense, one that's going to be near the goal line. You got a lot of outs here, even though he's a straight backup. I would expect to not be starting him for several weeks, but running backs get hurt, situations change, And second round draft capital makes it very, very interesting. I actually think in especially leagues that are very running back thirsty, you know those draft rooms.
Of
James
course.
Cook at that same draft range where Treylon Burks and Drake London are going. I'd rather build up my arsenal of running backs, might be on the bench to begin, with players like James Cook on great offenses like the Bills.
Yeah, so this one's interesting to me because if you look at underdog, of course, best ball tournament, Singletary's at 106, James Cook is at 101. If you look at, say, a few of these other sites, though, let's go with, for the sake of ease here, let's go with Yahoo. All right, so Yahoo Singletary is 75 right now, 75, and James Cook is 113.
Yeah.
That's where we have to draw you have to be able to identify whether or not the separation in ADP is enough to really go and say, all right, I just prefer him more 4 rounds later or 5 rounds later, whatever it is. In that case, yeah, absolutely. I think the upside is unquestionably there. If it's Singletary or Cook basically at the same ADP, which one would you rather have?
Singletary every
Okay,
time,
yeah, me
pretty
too.
much.
Me too. Yeah.
But that doesn't mean James Cook. This is what's hard about if you're, first few years playing fantasy football and we're talking about range of outcomes. Well, just tell me the answer. The whole point is getting in your team into a situation where you have enough to have a strong projection week 1, and you have enough of that upside, the positive part of the range of outcomes, that you can capture some of it later in the season.
Yep.
Both
And
players
honestly,
are strong.
like if Singletary goes at 101, or if Cook goes at 101, and then Singletary's there, I'll take that. I'll take either of them in this triple-digit rounds. I have zero issues with that whatsoever. But just to draw some, I just came across a picture. Dalvin Cook standing next to his brother James Cook. Dalvin Cook is a freakish-looking human being. I mean, is
he way bigger?
A hulking human being. Yes. Have you? Dude,
hold
on. While we talk, I'm just gonna shoot this. Unbelievable. Like, obviously, the DK. You remember the DK Metcalf viral picture that went around, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, man, that is something crazy. And the funny thing is, his brother's huge, but he looks small. Oh no, you know what? That's not him. That's Troy Dye. But I just thought because I pulled up his brother. Anyway, that's shocking.
Wow.
Shocking.
That's a man who knows that his body is his moneymaker.
Just huge. Anyway, Breece Hall, Kenneth Walker, James Cook, all of them have some barriers. Like, yeah, there's Michael Carter, but in my opinion, I still think that's the least concerning barrier. 4th round draft pick from last year. Like with Walker, Penny's coming off a really good season, just got a new contract, is still a first-round pick, former first-round pick. Devin Singletary was, one of the best and most often used in terms of just snaps players over the last final 5 weeks of the season and into the postseason, where I think he played 100% of snaps or something insane in that divisional round game. So there's that. And then you have guys like Rachaad White and then Brian Robinson. Rachaad White for Tampa Bay, Brian Robinson for Washington. How do you approach targeting these guys, if at all?
So I'm glad we're spending some time on these day 2 running backs, because I think most season-long fantasy shows don't spend enough time here on how to play these players. Guys, these are kind of important players to have on your radar near the end of drafts, because these are the types of players in best ball drafts, they're getting scooped up earlier than you might think. You're like, who is this guy? And then at the end of drafts, you're like, oh, they're all still there, available for me. Brian Robinson on Washington could have a role right away. Again, we're saying only take one Washington player. Let's say you already have. Rachaad White, I think he's one Leonard Fournette hammy pull away from having a serious role, because they're not turning the reins over to Keyshawn Vaughn or Giovanni Bernard. They don't profile that way. So even though he was picked outside the top 90 players, and they're not going to trust a running back unless they're very good in pass protection for Tom Brady. Rachaad White, man, he really intrigues me just because of the situation he's in. And you know that the Tampa Bay offense, if you have any sort of role there, you can be fantasy relevant real quick.
But Robinson for you, is that a stay away?
End of the draft, no problem. It's one of those where he's probably, in terms of fantasy points scored, unless there's an injury, he's the third running back in terms of fantasy points scored on a team that's not going to score a lot of total fantasy points. Do I really need that?
You don't at all. I mean, you don't. Let's wrap this up with some guys a little bit further down the list that might be making some noise that could be interesting. You know, there's Alec Pierce. Wide receiver core in Indianapolis is limited right now, and who knows if Paris Campbell stays healthy. There's Sky Moore in Kansas City. A lot of mouths to feed, but when you're vacating 170 targets or whatever it was from last year, who knows who's going to come out on top? George Pickens from in Pittsburgh, Thornton with the Patriots. Again, another wide receiver core where you have no idea how that's going to play out. Wan'Dale Robinson looks to have sewn up that slot role. Starting slot role in New York, Christian Watson in Green Bay. But then you have Romeo Doubs, who appears to be somebody that Aaron Rodgers really likes. This guy doesn't really say good things about any receivers. Young receivers.
It's true.
And he had a lot to say about him. So that's an interesting situation playing out in Green Bay where you're also vacating a ton of targets with Devontae Adams and Marquez Valdez-Scantling gone.
They need a wide receiver one so bad on that team. He doesn't care. Aaron Rodgers doesn't care who it is.
Nope.
They hoped it was Christian Watson. I actually still like Christian Watson. He's got to get on the field, though. You know, the chemistry and the timing could not be more important for a quarterback like Aaron Rodgers. So that's really concerning. But the athletic profile for that second rounder, Christian Watson, picked at the 202 in the NFL draft, 6'4", 208, 44% of his college offense at NDSU was taken up by Christian Watson. That's a 90th percentile college dominator rating. Man, in Dynasty, I'm still taking shots. Maybe in redraft, it's a little too risky for a player like Watson. And I do like the hype about Dobbs, however you say it. But
I think it's Dubs.
Dubs?
I believe so.
Here's what I know. Is that Aaron Rodgers, if he starts to trust you, he will lock onto you. And if you're right about that, you could have a surefire wide receiver one. But if you're wrong, you may just have a literal bench player. So know what you're getting into with that type of pick. Let's see how the preseason games shake out. If they have the first team offense, Dubs is basically still free in redraft leagues. We'll see. If he makes a splash play or two, that won't be the same.
Okay. So I read the other day that it was Dubs. It's definitely not Dubs or Daubs or anything like that.
Gotcha.
But then someone else says that it's pronounced Dobbs. So it's Dobbs or Dubs, either one. So what you do in a situation where you don't know, and I do this often, right, is you just mumble it. So then nobody knows. You'd be like, Romeo Dobbs is a really right. So then it's like you can't really get it wrong when someone tries to correct you. You didn't really hear what I said anyway. But yeah, someone can emerge there. Are there any other guys that can emerge as like legitimate fantasy football darlings this year? They don't have to win your league, but maybe quality flex player, maybe your wide receiver 3, maybe even ending up being your wide receiver 2 or a flex. Running back is a little bit more difficult, but even like a flex running back each week or a guy that you pull off the waiver after week 5.
All right, I'm going to give you my one pick, but I'm going to give my honorable mentions first. Wan'Dale Robinson and Sky Moore will be fantasy relevant very quickly. Wan'Dale Robinson on the Giants, I actually think he could low-key get some of these little pitch passes, shovel passes, or even carries in the backfield. That's how he was used in college. Sky Moore, there's a story that came out, I believe, in The Athletic. That front office was locked in to Sky Moore in the second round. They are thrilled to get to use him. But my pick...
Can I guess?
Yeah.
All right. And I haven't looked at the sheet. I know I haven't looked. Is it Isaiah Pacheco?
It is not. It is not.
I thought it would be. Okay, who is it?
George Pickens. George Pickens is going to score more fantasy points than Chase Claypool this year. That's my big call.
Wow.
I think Deontay Johnson has a locked-in role. They paid him like he does. I think George Pickens, I have my fiance's family is from Pittsburgh, and so I hear little tidbits about the beat reporters. Apparently this guy is popping like crazy in training camp right now. We'll see, but I think George Pickens is going to be very fantasy relevant very fast.
Damn. Okay. That is not who I thought you were going to go with at all.
I know they need a quarterback.
I thought what I thought was that given how, and yes, they do need a quarterback, but what I thought is given how bad or how underwhelming Clyde Edwards-Helaire has been, that maybe you would have gone that route. And I don't know. I mean,
he's a 7th rounder, Pacheco. Like, it's cool that he's
not good. It's not good. It's funny though, because only good things have been coming out of camp with him.
Yeah. He's a different, Pacheco, I should say, is a different kind of running back than Ronald Jones or Clyde Edwards-Helaire. So I think he's going to stick, which is really cool. You know, he could be the next Eckler, but to say that he definitely is a bold
he's probably a
take,
special teams guy when it all comes down to it.
One injury though, as what tends to happen to running backs, and then you never know. So I think we should mention the quarterbacks real quick. Kenny Pickett, I think it's a little overblown that he's with the 3rd team right now. Give him some time. I think he'll be starting a couple of games by midseason. I'd be very surprised if we came out of the 2022 season without seeing the 1st rounder Kenny Pickett start a few games.
All right, but well then hold on a second. We can wrap with this, okay? You mentioned Kenny Pickett, and you see him down and buried on the depth chart. What about Desmond Ridder?
He's definitely got the 2nd best chance to start. I might be really wrong about this. I think Mariota, the eval, was a little bit whiffed by the Tennessee coaching staff. I think he looked pretty solid in his limited use in Las Vegas and Oakland, and I actually think he has a chance to really stick. I think he could be a little bit better than people think. And if he does, then players like Drake London and certainly Kyle Pitts are going to be much more fantasy relevant. I think Desmond Ridder, there's a reason he slipped in the draft. I don't know if he's really ready yet. The rushing upside is really enticing for people. I get it. But Mariota has some rushing upside too. So I don't know. I really don't know. I said in the show sheet here that Desmond Ridder, Matt Corral, Malik Willis are all long shots to play in 2022, meaning it's injury or just a complete collapse by the player in front of them.
Remember 2 years ago when Marcus Mariota, somebody solo binked a showdown slate, 250,000 or whatever it was, with Marcus Mariota at captain, and he didn't start that game. It was when Derek Carr got hurt early. You remember that?
I sure do. That was ridiculous. That overtime game, I think it was against the
Chargers. Yeah. Oh, man.
Crazy stuff.
He had 88 rushing yards, a rushing touchdown, 226 passing yards, and a passing touchdown. That'll get it done at 0% ownership. Anyway, appreciate you guys. Thanks, as always, to Phil for producing this one. Follow Matt at Draftaholic, me at Loughy_D, LOUGHY_D. Hit that thumbs up, subscribe, leave a comment before you go. And let your friends know we're doing this every single Friday, and we'll catch you back here for the next one. Peace.